At dawn, a 150-meter longline vessel leaves the harbor, heading for deep offshore slopes where
The city lights fall behind as the crew push toward open ocean, chasing rumors of a colossal pufferfish haunting the continental shelf.
With land gone below the horizon, every man aboard knows tonight's hunt for a giant pufferfish will test both patience and heavy steel.
Before the first hook touches water, the captain reviews charts and warning labels, reminding everyone how deadly a mishandled pufferfish can be.
Height, weight, teeth, and toxins appear on the board, turning a simple fish into a high-risk target that demands industrial discipline.
Survival suits, gloves, and face shields become mandatory, because a giant pufferfish on a rolling deck is as dangerous as it is valuable. Miles of mainline and thousands of leaders feed off the drum, each circle hook waiting for the bite of a swollen, armored pufferfish.
On the back deck, bait crew work in silence, charging every hook with oily fish to draw in unseen predators from the dark blue below. The long line streams out behind the stern, turning this empty stretch of sea into a silent trap line laid for a single enormous pufferfish. Far below the hull, baited hooks sink through green layers of light, vanishing toward the dim boundary where giant pufferfish patrol the slope.
A vague, round silhouette emerges from the haze, the first hint that something massive and balloon-shaped is drifting up toward the long line. A single giant pufferfish circles the steel leaders with slow, arrogant passes, studying the strange
Smaller puffers dart in and out of view, their curiosity masking the bulkier shadow behind them that the crew are truly hoping to meet tonight. Then the giant emerges, a pale, spotted orb of muscle and poison, hovering inches from the bait as if weighing every possible danger.
Near the surface, the giant pufferfish briefly breaks the chop, bloated and glistening, hinting at its size before sinking back into gray water.
Each time the fish loops closer, it tests the scent, nipping at stray scraps while the fully baited circle hook waits suspended just beyond easy reach.
At the surface, only brief flashes of pale belly and spotted back betray the presence of an animal that prefers to inflate rather than flee.
Every pass grows tighter, the fish tracing careful arcs around the bait, mapping danger as only a slow, deliberate predator can.
The hooked line hangs still, waiting, while the puffer's dark eyes follow every tiny sway of the bait in the gentle current. For now, caution wins, and the giant simply watches, content to let smaller fish strip what it does not yet dare to claim. Occasionally it rises to the surface, body rounding as it takes in water, then deflates and sinks, rehearsing the escape it might soon need. The orbit tightens, and the bait now hangs directly in the path of an animal built to swell like a mine instead of sprint like a torpedo.
Each brush of its lips scrapes scales from the bait, a slow-motion negotiation between suspicion and hunger.
On the surface, the floats hardly move, but beneath them a decision is forming that will send shockwaves all the way back to the stern. The fish returns again, passing closer, body rotating slowly as if searching for a weakness in the glittering steel and unfamiliar smell.
Small shifts in current rock the bait into heavier contact with its lips, each nudge eroding the fish's resolve.
Around and around it goes, a living mind circling closer to the tripwire held quietly by an unseen crew many meters above.
The bait brushes its teeth once more, and this time the fish lingers, chewing rather than simply testing.
Tension builds in the thin line from fish to hook to crew, a silent thread connecting predator and hunters through hundreds of meters of water.
One more bite is all it will take to turn curiosity into conflict between delicate flesh and industrial steel.
In this last calm moment, no one aboard knows that the line below is seconds from coming alive.
When the bite finally turns committed, the ocean itself will seem to shudder in response.
This is the razor-thin line between a clean release and a fight that may last hours.
The tension on deck rises as the giant pufferfish presses its lips against the bait again and again, flirting with the hook but never quite committing.
In a single lunge, the bait disappears into the fish's mouth, the line snaps tight, and the circle hook buries into the tough corner of its jaw.
The first shock reaches the surface, buoys jerking sideways as the inflated pufferfish thrashes, turning the calm skin of the ocean into a boiling scar.
Below, the hooked pufferfish dives in slow, stubborn arcs, towing the long line low and forcing the crew to choose between patience and power.
On the surface, floats stagger and vanish into foam, tracing every desperate surge as the fish twists its wide body against unyielding steel.
Each time the fish inflates, drag multiplies, turning its own defense into a weapon against the gear and the men attached to it.
Up top, that extra drag feels like an anchor snagging rock, the first real sign that this is no ordinary fish.
Underwater, the giant now churns in thick, clumsy circles, using its inflated bulk as a battering ram against the invisible pull from above.
On the surface, it appears as a rolling patch of white water and bubbles that refuses to drift free from the ship.
Each deep pull threatens to saw leaders against unseen rocks, a slow-motion battle between abrasion and the fish's powerful jaw.
The crew answer with controlled winch pressure, easing line back only when the strain approaches the breaking point.
Slowly, the circles shrink, and the fish's bursts grow shorter, each inflation costing precious energy it can never reclaim.
Above, the buoys now cluster closer to the ship, a visual countdown to the moment the African-American crew finally sees what they are tied to.
Far below, the hooked pufferfish trudges along the slope, every kick sending silt swirling as it drags the line up from the bottom.
On the surface, the ship begins to pivot, aligning hull and line so the fight stays clear of props and steel edges. On deck, gloved hands ride the hydraulic controls, feathering winch speed to keep tension steady without snapping the leader.
Below, each click of drum above means another meter of hard-earned gain against a fish that refuses to collapse.
The surface footprint tightens, white water and bubbles hugging closer to the ship with every careful pull. On deck, one wrong move could still send the line recoiling like a whip, turning success into serious injury.
Underwater, the inflated body now hangs closer to the surface, its spots and scars growing clearer in the fading blue. On the surface, crew can finally see flashes of pale flank between bursts of spray, proof that every risk taken tonight has a shape.
The deck becomes a stage, every eye locked on the roller as the first leader connected to the giant comes aboard.
Below, the fish jerks sideways, feeling the sudden shallowing water and the unfamiliar speed toward the light. On the surface, the disturbance begins to track directly toward the ramp, forced into position by both current and careful helm work.
On deck, every step is planned, from where to stand to how to fall if the line suddenly goes slack.
Underwater, the giant's once violent convulsions soften into heavy, exhausted rolls as it nears the shimmering surface.
At the surface, every splash is now amplified by fatigue, the fish too tired to move gracefully, yet too stubborn to surrender.
On deck, the landing ramp floods, turning metal steps into a slick, controlled slide ready to accept several hundred kilos of angry, inflated fish.
Below, the fish makes one last attempt to dive, only to find the line now too short and the pull too constant.
On the surface, its rounded back finally breaks cleanly into view, leaving no doubt that the target tonight is real and enormous. On deck, shouts turn to tight, short commands as the crew prepare to trap and restrain a fish designed by nature to be almost unmanageable. Underwater, the giant drifts just below the surface film, its inflated belly brushing against invisible currents shaped by the moving hull.
On the surface, the line now runs almost straight from roller to fish, the long hunt condensed into a few meters of rope and foam.
On deck, small adjustments in winch speed mean the difference between tearing gear free and swinging the fish neatly into the center of the ramp.
Underwater, the pufferfish's fins barely move, its energy spent, but sheer bulk still resisting every attempt to bring it fully under control.
At the surface, that rocking turns into rolling, a slow-motion tumble that signals the fish is finally running out of options.
On deck, crew lean out with poles and lines, guiding the fish toward the flooded ramp while avoiding any sudden jerks that could snap the leader.
Underwater, bubbles rise from the fish's gills as it comes level with the ramp, the ship's lights becoming a harsh sun above it.
On the surface, the final distance between fish and steel shrinks to a few meters, a narrow window where any mistake can still send it free.
On deck, the cradle frame is lifted into place, ready to clamp down on the inflated body as soon as it slides within reach.
Below, the fish makes one last weak twist, but the line now points straight up into the hull, leaving no room to run.
The closer the pufferfish comes, the more dangerous the leader becomes. A humming wire that could break bones if it whips free without warning. Around the bow, the disturbance widens into a white halo, proof that the fight has shifted from a deep tug-of-war into a surface brawl.
On deck, the landing ramp becomes a narrow corridor where steel, water, and inflated flesh will collide in the next few seconds.
Underwater, the giant drifts into alignment with the ramp, its bloated body filling the frame from snout to tail. On deck, winch drums grow louder, each revolution hauling the fish's full weight onto steel instead of into open water.
On the surface, a final surge of foam marks the instant the official's head crosses onto the ramp and out of the sea.
On deck, the landing ramp is now half filled by the giant, its swollen sides scraping against rails as it thrashes.
Underwater, only the fish's tail remains submerged, beating a furrow through the surface film as the rest of its weight shifts onto the steel.
On deck, the winch growls as each meter of line comes home, grinding through rust and salt toward the final lockdown. On the surface behind the ship, the last free buoys tumble and vanish, their job done the moment the catch is firmly aboard.
On deck, the landing ramp roars with water and noise as crew move in to pin the giant safely in place.
Underwater, the battle is over. Only swirling silt and fading bubbles mark where the fish once dragged gear across the slope.
On deck, the giant pufferfish slams its tail and belly against wet metal, inflating even larger as seawater pour away from its armored skin. On the surface, the ocean quickly forgets, waves closing over the spot where steel and flesh fought for control.
On deck, the crew's world shrinks to this single ramp, this single fish, and the tight corridor of wet steel around it.
The giant pufferfish finally lies alongside the ship, a mottled balloon of muscle hammering wake and foam against cold steel plates. Hauled higher onto the ramp, the fish slams its tail against the deck, each blow echoing through the steel bones of the vessel.
Crew snap a heavy cradle over the body, pinning the inflated giant safely in place before it can roll free and turn the deck into chaos.
Beside the hull, only faint ripples remain where the giant first rose, now replaced by the steadier rhythm of the ship pressing onward.
On deck, straps and lines are checked twice, because an unexpected deflation or twist could still send gear and people flying.
The ramp is slowly lifted, feeding the massive body toward the flat, safer area of the working deck. From the sea, the vessel now looks indifferent, just another hull cutting a path across open water, its secret prize hidden from view. On deck, the giant finally reaches the flat gridwork of steel, where measurements, photos, and data will turn this fight into science. The deck crew step back for a moment, letting the ship's motion and the strapped cradle settle before they move in again.
Outside the rail, waves roll past, as if nothing extraordinary has happened at all. On deck, the cradle locks are double-checked one last time before the scientists and loggers move in with tools and boards. For a brief moment, the entire industrial operation pauses, centered on a single fish that almost no one will ever see in person. This is the point where adrenaline fades and the long, meticulous work of documenting a rare giant begins. With the fight over, the team move in with tape measures and notebooks, turning this rare capture into a precise data point.
Length, girth, and weight are recorded against time, depth, and position, building a picture of a species most people only know from headlines. Every scar and spine is photographed, each mark a clue to previous encounters with predators, boats, or other unseen hazards.
Samples are taken with care, because even here, high above the waterline, this animal's toxins command respect.
When the checklist is complete, the raw numbers will travel far beyond this deck, informing science, management, and the next generation of hunters.
Only after every measurement is double-checked do the men allow themselves a grin, leaning on the railing beside the huge, still shuddering pufferfish. Coffee replaces adrenaline as stories of past fights and close calls roll across the deck in low, tired laughter.
For a moment, the giant is just another part of the scenery, background to jokes that only make sense this far from land.
Later, the same deck feels strangely empty. The giant moved out of sight, while hoses and brushes erase the evidence of the struggle. Boots, gloves, and gear are checked and stowed, ready to repeat the entire ordeal the next time the line goes tight.
For now, only wet footprints and faint stains hint that anything huge and dangerous ever slid across this steel floor.
In the galley, razor-sharp knives flash under bright LEDs, but only licensed experts are allowed near any part of a pufferfish that might become food.
Layers of rules and training stand between hungry customers and a toxin that has ended far more lives than this crew ever will.
Hours later on shore, a calm dining room hides the chaos at sea as diners lift delicate slices without ever seeing the longline that caught them.
For most people, the story begins at the table and ends with the last bite, the ocean reduced to flavor and memory.
As the light fades, the crew wash the deck clean, coiling leaders and hooks back into order for the next long unches.
The vessel shrinks into the violet horizon, leaving only wave patterns behind to mark where one inflated